And of course, we're family members, FMs, and family and friends, for example. Reading this aloud and saying this aloud, very appropriate and safe and sound, and very excellent, fine and good about 100% of the time. Different anchors and bases, and paraphrase quotation summarize vividly. The man and the individual person said, paraphrase quotation summarize, he or she said, he or she said, he or she said. The man and the individual person said, the man and the individual person said. Paraphrase, he or she said, he or she said. For example, the different anchors and bases. Don't know much about this or that, don't really care, honestly, throughout history. Know much, and do know about 0% prolonged long duration real mortal sin here. About 0% prolonged long duration real mortal sin here. And also, for example, about 0% real carnal S period, And for example, about 0% real prolonged racial S period, or T period. And about 0% prolonged long duration real treason here. About 0% prolonged long duration real treason here, for example. And about 0% real, for example, FIL sin, FIL period sin, for example. And about 0% prolonged duration real BE period sin, prolonged notation BE period sin here, for example. And those are reading that aloud and saying it aloud, and sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So about 0% prolonged notation real mortal, carnal, racial, BES period, BE period, FIL, sin, and racial, TT period, or SS period, and prolongation about 0% prolonged real treason here, and prolongation real mortal sin, carnal sin, BE period, FIL, racial, and mortal sin, for example, so called. So very excellent, fine and good about 100% of the time. Very excellent, fine and good about 100% of the time, and very good to know, all very obvious and very apparent. Sort of it follows, and here we are, for example, different time frames, and absolutely very important anchors and bases. Reading that aloud and saying that aloud, and a lot of jokes and bluffing and teasing and joking, maybe about that, maybe not about that, sort of, sorta, different ratios, percentages, proportions, sort of different, sort of eclectic, and sort of all over the place, and of course, reading aloud and saying aloud, and maybe about that, maybe not about that, very appropriate and safe and sound, about 100% of the time, very appropriate and safe and sound, about 100% of the time, for needed gestures, motions, movements, and very appropriate and safe and sound, about 100% of the time, very appropriate and safe and sound, about 100% of the time, and we're family members and friends, for example, very appropriate and safe and sound about 100% of the time, very appropriate and safe and sound about 100% of the time, very excellent, fine and good about 100% of the time, very excellent, fine and good about 100% of the time, and we're family members, FMs and family members, FMs and family and friends, for example.